parish here, but there was a series of articles by Mario Manzardo, and we have them in our library, and they are about life in Roseland. They were published maybe in the 60s or 70s, looking back at life in Roseland. So that's, if you're interested in going forward on this. Of course, we had some technical problems earlier, but let's go to the first Italian Catholic church. And we have Peter Pero, who a long time ago did a parish history anniversary book for Assumption Church. And so we had to go back to the cobwebs of his mind to bring back the information. Peter?
Golden Jubilee.
Okay. Take
right.
the mic, yeah.
I'll cut the cell phone, and I've been amazed during this conference, nobody's cell phones went off. And that's terrific. Because usually at Mass, right, they go off on Sundays. You're bound to. But I'll cut mine and say that we reached back to the first Italian Catholic parish in Chicago, Assumption, 1881. And Assumption was more of a citywide collection of Italian immigrants, not just the Italians of Little Sicily. See if we can, take a look at processions that went on in the north side colony. Keep in mind this statue of Virgin Mother, because I went back and looked in the church in order to prepare today's preparation, and to my surprise, there she is again, the same statue that was carried through the streets. Remember that pose, remember those eyes and the hands folded, and you see them again about 100 years earlier being carried near Erie Street, Assumption. It's behind the Merchandise Mart, if you haven't been there, and got to be nicknamed the Little Church behind the Mart. People say, where are you going? Where are you going? It's Sunday morning. I'm going into the Little Church behind the Mart. Assumption. It was staffed by Servite fathers, and they were the first to make a toehold there in 1881, and then later the Sisters of Sacred Heart built the school. But as Dominic alluded to yesterday, it was some of the families were very mercantile and fairly well-to-do merchants in the Italian Chicago community at the turn of the century. One was the Cuneo family. And I noticed as we walked to lunch, the Cuneo Hall is here, and I think that's related, a descendant that contributed, not necessarily Lawrence. But there's that, and made their money on the printing houses in the Printers Row in South Loop. There were others, the Lavasorios, the Chesros, Frank Chesros Church, and so on and so on. And these tended to be the successful merchants of the Italian Chicago in the 1920s. Big givers. Let me see if we can, as it is today, and I was able to find it. Let me make it bigger. I'm sorry. I believe I can make it bigger for you. There. Pause. That I had to go back to see how it looked now and compare, since we did the Golden Jubilee in 1981. And some of the big differences is the growth around it. Because in 1981, it was mainly low-scale factories and printing shops. Now look what we've got in what's called River West. Suddenly, it's River West, and it used to be north side of Italy. The church is thriving, by the way. How come? Well, if you look behind the Mass schedule, you see these new constructions and the apparel mart that came in, and it's adjacent to the Merchandise Mart, where the Holiday Inn is up on top. You've got so many condos and offices now that they are looking for Mass. They're running noon, 12 o'clock Mass every day. So it gives you an idea of how things are changed. It's just not weekend church, but there are people coming over during office time. There's been a revival at Assumption. Of course, Ellen Scarrett talked well last night and in great detail about Mother Cabrini, who came to service the school with Sacred Heart Sisters and was dedicated to that little school. And when I looked inside again last month to see what was going on, there's her statue as it exists at Assumption Church. And plaster image. I looked into the school, 1900. By the 30s, there were 1,000 kids in the school, so it was serving a North Side immigrant population. But by 1945, it closed. More and more industry was growing around the mart, and more families were moving west.
The building is still there. It's a condo. If you look carefully, you can see Assumption. We haven't been able to rub it out yet in the stone there above the door.
Right, and I did catch that. And Father Conrad Bortredge talked last night about the Servite commitment to still holding masses in and running the church. He did a fine job. Thank you, Conrad, last night, along with Ellen Scarrett. But if you look at this, I call this schoolroom the Chicago Trinity. We have the cross, and we have the Virgin Mother on the left, but we also have Abraham Lincoln on the right. So that's part of the Chicago trilogy or Trinity in most Catholic school classrooms. Yes, this is what Dominic was talking about. This is the school today. And my interest is Catholic schools right now. That's my research interest for Chicago and my writing interest. So I was glad to see that this one survived very, very well. And it is condos, as Dominic mentioned now. And they've got the wherewithal to preserve that facade. Last night, Ellen was showing us an old picture with the kids standing on the windowsills to get a photo, not to act out or joke, but so there it is, near Illinois Street. This brings me, though, to surroundings, this climate of Catholic education and how many Chicago Catholic schools existed in the 30s. You may see your old alma mater, so I thought, okay, with 10 slides, I'd throw in the school climate, which is my research interest now, and everyone in this room went to either public or Catholic, and so you can probably harken back to some of these scenes when we used manual typewriters and when we used chalk, and this one is an astronomy class. Teacher up on the step ladder, and some of the icons there, the flag, and again, manual equipment. I remember learning to speed type on this old horse, on that old burro, that Oliver typewriter, which were made in Chicago, Olivers. Not Olivetti, but Oliver. A lab. The unsung heroes of the cafeterias. You remember the cafeteria lady, the lunch ladies, and the traffic crossing. And these brothers, Christian brothers, were serving up the food. That's service. Boy, that's service in so many ways. Boy, things were like a quarter for a sandwich. The language labs. Remember the old reel-to-reel? We suffered through those. That was high tech of its time. Locker monitors I put in my recent book, and checking on other girls who might left their locker open. Studying German on 45 records, and Latin class, and in some schools like Mother Guerin, St. Patrick's, there was Italian offered, Notre Dame in Belmont Cragen. So I leave you with that. Here's a Latin class, and pretty good idea. Learning your math through Latin, or reciting the Pledge of Allegiance through Latin. I thought that's a clever teacher. So it's back there on the table, and it's called The Soul Survivors. Assumption is one. At least the church is thriving now in River West, and it is the first Catholic parish. So if you want to take a look, these will be in the back. Make your donation and find out more. Some of these outtakes are in the book, and many more. So that's Assumption Church in a nutshell.
Thank you, Peter. Any quick questions? I want to point out photos by Dominic Mano. He was a professional photographer, and he went to Assumption Church and took some photographs, and we have them on display here. Questions about Assumption?
The original school condo, is that brass or bronze on the top there? Is that still there?
Yeah, that's preserved. It's turned green, greenish, but that's preserved
Is
well.
it brass or bronze?
Copper, I would say
Oh,
copper.
copper.
There's another Cuneo donation to the windows from Dominic Neal that he was able to capture, but paid by Cuneo money.
Yeah, the Cuneos were famous in printing, the Kroger stores, and Gulf Mill Shopping Center.
Oh.
And they continue to be major philanthropists to this university. Yes.
Yeah, one question. I used to work downtown, and I used to go to Assumption all the time for noon mass. A question I have on the, I believe it's the west side of the church, there's a stained glass window that commemorates Vatican II. My question is, what was removed to put that in the 1960s?
Probably one that was weaker still and more endangered, and probably put somewhere else. Maybe at the Servite Archive on the west side. Conrad, do you have glass there?
I'm not sure. All the windows were replaced by Father Perazzi
Tom
in
Ferrazzi.
the 30s, I think. And so none of the original windows are there except the one in the back of the Assumption. That's a Munich school studio, stained glass window. And there's one other one over the door leading to the sacristy. But the others are much more recent. They're not the originals at all.
Yeah, final note, as Father Conrad mentioned yesterday, this church was fairly well financed in contrast to the other really early